Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we've got another lesson called powers with negative bases. So remember, the base is the big number at the bottom, and so there's going to be a negative sign with that base. Now there's two different ways it can be displayed. One of the ways is if it's with a bracket, and that means that the negative sign is going to repeat inside the bracket with the base number. Now you can get at the answer a little bit more quickly if you discover that if the exponent is an odd number, so that means the exponent is a 3 or a 4 or a 5 or even a 1, not a 3 or 4 or 5, sorry, it's an odd number. It's going to be a 3, a 5, a 7, or a 9. Could even be a 1, then the answer is going to be negative. If the exponent is even, like a 2, a 4, a 6, an 8, etc., the answer is going to be positive. Now that just gets you to the sign a little bit more quickly. So let's look at what's happening. So in the first example here, we've got -2 in a bracket with the 3 outside the bracket. So that means the bracket is in fact repeating 3 times. And inside that bracket is a negative and a 2. So the negative is going to repeat with the 2. Now when we go to calculate the answer, 2 times 2 is 4, and then 4 times 2 is 8. If we think about the sign, a negative times a negative is going to give you a positive, and then you take that positive and times it by a negative, and it's going to give you a negative. If we use the short rule, this is odd, so the answer is negative. Okay? I'll look at the second example. -1 in a bracket is going to repeat 4 times. So -1 times -1 times -1 times -1. How do we calculate the answer? Well, 1 times 1 is 1, times another 1 is 1, times another 1 is 1. So 1 is our answer, not our sign yet. And then a negative times a negative is a positive. Take that positive and times it by a negative, and we're back to a negative. Take that negative and times it by another negative, and we're back to a positive. Well, we could have used the rule. The exponent is even, so the answer is going to be positive. Right? Oops. Let's just use the shorthand rule now, right? The exponent is odd, so our answer is going to be negative. And then what? -3 times -3 times -3. 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 3 is 27. So the answer is -27. Right? Look at the next one. We're not going to write out all of the numbers repeating, but this has an even exponent. Even exponents means the answer is going to be positive. And 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, it doesn't matter how many times we multiply a 1, it's still going to equal 1. Look at the last example. This is an odd exponent. So odd exponent means it's going to be a negative answer. And again, 1 repeated in multiplication is still going to give us 1 as an answer. Okay? Now, that's if the negative sign is in a bracket with the base and the exponent is on the outside. The other possible way of seeing a negative base is without brackets. So what happens? The negative sign does not repeat. It just sits at the front. If we have a negative sign just sitting at the front, then the answer is always negative. So what really is happening here? This is the base and the exponent. So our power is in fact 2 repeating 3 times. And that negative sign is just sitting at the front, so we'll put it at the front. So the 2 repeating 3 times gives us 2 times 2 is 4, times another 2 is 8. Sorry. And the negative sign at the front gives us -8. Okay? Again, This is our power. It is 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ones, and the negative sign sits at the front. So 1 repeating in multiplication 6 times is still going to give us 1. The negative sign at the front is going to mean is still a negative sign at the answer. So -1. The last example we have here, the power is actually 3 to the 4th. So that's going to be 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. That negative sign is just sitting at the front. Multiply. 3 times 3 is 9. This 3 times 3 is 9. And then multiplying 9 times 9 to give you 81. Negative sign at the front, so there's going to be a negative sign in the answer. Always negative if there's no bracket, because the negative sign is not repeating. Okay, let's go to a few examples with negative bases on BEDMAS questions. So brackets first. We do have a bracket, but it's just holding a number. Then we go to exponents. So 2 to the 2 means 2 times 2 with a negative sign in front. Negative sign is not repeating because it's not in a bracket, so that's going to be -4. Here we have a bracket, so the -2 is going to repeat 3 times. So repeating 3 times gives us a negative, and 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. So our next step now is going to be to add. Cold added to more cold is going to give us -12 as a final answer. Okay, these are going to be worth 2 marks, 1 for getting your powers correctly calculated, and then 1 for the answer. Okay, second example. The negative sign is repeating with the 1, so that's going to be -1 times -1 times -1, and I'll maybe write another one out here, -1. So 4 negative ones. Repeating 4 times is going to give us a +1. The next power is going to be -2 repeating 3 times. Whoops. And 3 times gives us a negative. 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8, so that's going to give us -8, and there's a subtract in between. So now we're going to add the opposite, and we got hot 1 plus hot 8. This is going to give us +9 as an answer. All right, this one looks a little confusing because we have 2 negative signs, or 2 what looks like subtract signs. Okay, this is a negative. Okay, that means 2 is repeating twice, so 2 times 2. And we've got a negative sign in front, so that's going to be -4. All right. Now, a number next to a bracket means multiplying, so that's going to multiply the next power. So the -2 in a bracket is repeating once. So if it's repeating once, that's just going to be -2. I'm going to bring down the rest. Now this comes down as this subtract sign and a 6. So now we have a multiply and we have a subtract. So BEDMAS says now we multiply or divide and multiply from left to right. So -4 times -2, a negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 2 is 8. Bring down the subtract, so 6 minus. So now turn this into an add. We're going to be adding the opposite. So now 6 hot plus 8 cold is going to give us -2 as a final answer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be working on an assignment. It is called Powers with Negative Bases. Take care.